Heather going to join us?
I can talk, but
Hi,
here's
Heather.
my current situation. I'm in my car and it's going to get really dark. So I'm
Oh, good.
like, ah! I'm at
Good.
cheer practice. That's the life of a mom with a teenage daughter. So
It's good to see you. Thanks for being with us. And thanks for keeping us all organized.
Mhm.
that's my job. That's my job.
All right, Taylor, we are top of the hour, so let's roll.
All right, let's do it. All right, so just so everybody knows, this is a webinar format, so we can't see you personally like a typical Zoom call. We'll only be able to see the panelists. And then at the end, if you have questions for Lanny, you can put that in that little Q&A chat box at the top, and we'll vet those and ask Lanny some of your questions. So we're gonna just have Steve start with a little introduction about who Lanny is and how we know him and why we are so thrilled to have him here with us tonight.
Excellent. Thank you, Taylor. And welcome, everybody, this evening. Any of you that have spent any time with me at all over the years, you already know about Lanny Bassham and his background and his history. For those of you that may not know, Lanny has a fascinating story that we're going to talk about tonight. And he will tell you in his own words, probably the most unlikely Olympic gold medalist, maybe ever, Lanny. And but just an amazing story, an amazing life. And one of the things that I appreciate the most about Lanny, in addition to his amazing athletic accomplishments and all the world records that he has been able to set, is, there's this old cliche that that I don't believe, which says, those who can do and those who can't teach. And it's actually the opposite. That if you dig into the New Testament, not to get religious here, but just as a point of reference, is that one of the points that's noted is that it is a rare person that knows how to do and how to teach. That those two talents combined are rare, and when you find them, follow him. And Lanny, you fit that description. Not only somebody who's done it, but also knows how you did it and has the unique ability of being able to teach and coach other people on how to do the same thing. And you've spent your post-Olympic career sharing that and changing lives. And mine is one of the many, many thousands of people that you've had such a huge impact on, as well as the many students that have come through Eagle U that you've touched, as well as the many people that have heard your message. So I am, once again, very humbled and excited to share you tonight. And with the things, especially now in this time that we're going through, and the application of your system of mental management today. There is more mental illness in the world today than probably any other time in history. And the things that you have developed over the years are, I believe, the prescription for making a huge difference in everyone's life right now. And we'll talk about some specifics of that tonight. So adversity, I want to start with that. We've probably, none of us have probably ever been through a year that's been filled with as much unexpected events and adversity as this year. And Lanny, you have a very unique perspective on adversity and the opportunity that it creates. And if you will, I'd like to go all the way back to the 6th grade and in your life, and maybe you could share with us some of your early landmark adversity experiences and what they did for you.
Well, I was a terrible athlete in school. I arguably the worst athlete. I mean, I played alternate right field in Little League Baseball, and if you play Little League Baseball, that's where you put your worst player, and that was me. And I was kind of slow and short and uncoordinated, and basically nobody wanted me on their team. And I'm in 6th grade and we're studying the Olympics in school, and the teacher makes a statement in class. You know, it's possible somebody in this class could be Olympic champion someday. I wonder who'd have the best chance. And this little boy sitting next to me jumps right up and says, "Teacher, I don't know who'd have the best chance, but I know for sure to have the worst chance, Lanny." And I guess that was my first real look at adversity, in the sense that I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I wanted to be accepted, and I wasn't being accepted. I was an okay student, but I mean I wasn't accepted in any kind of sport. So I told my parents about it, and my mother sent me to the library to study, read books about Olympians, and I found out that they all had adversity. Wilma Rudolph had polio as a child, and they told her she would never walk, and she ends up winning 3 gold medals in track. So I got a little bit inspired about that, and so I started really having a love for the Olympics and the ideal of the Olympics because of that comment. My father was a military officer, and that then it wasn't long after that somebody invited me to a rifle club meeting, and I didn't know anything about shooting at all, but I asked him about it, and he said it's an Olympic sport. And I said, "Are you sure?" Because the books I was reading had anything to do with the rifle. And we didn't shoot. We didn't have any guns in the house. And I said, "Well, tell me about rifle shooting." He said, I said, "That's all you have to be a rifle shooter." I said, "Well, that doesn't matter. And how strong do you have to be?" "Well, the rifles aren't that heavy." "How fast do you have to be?" "You don't understand. To be the best shooter in the world, all you got to do is stand still." And I thought, well, maybe I could do that. So I went to the rifle club meeting, and that's all. I was hooked on the first night. It was great. And all I wanted to talk about all that week was going back to the rifle club meeting. So my dad takes me back the next week, and they cancel a program.
Oh,
Some problem with the range. Okay, adversity number 2. And my father did a wonderful thing, though. He said, he told me, he says, I told him, I said, "This is the most disappointed I've ever been in my entire life." And he says, he told me, he says, "Well, give me a couple of days. Let me see what I can do." Well, somehow or another, he got the keys to an indoor range nobody was using, and would pick me up after school and take me to that range and begin to teach me how to shoot. They bought equipment. Now, my father didn't know anything about target shooting. He was a military officer, been in combat in World War II, but he found out there was a marksmanship unit in the base he was stationed at. So he'd go to the marksmanship unit, get information about target shooting, and come back and teach me. And 15 months later, I'm national junior champion with a rifle in my country.
wow.
But my story is not one of somebody having any gift for this, but my story is a little bit unique in the sense that for the first half of this 15-month period, I have no other shooters on the range, just me. And so I learned a couple of valuable lessons through that. Like if you're in a sport like shooting or archery or golf, where it's not a team sport, it's an individual sport, you'll learn pretty soon that your job is to get better today than you were yesterday, and not worry about other people, and not worry about what they're doing. And I learned early on that was a key, and I had no choice to learn it because there was nobody else there to worry about. But that kind of helped me a little bit. My father was a solution-based coach, meaning that he always told me, "Here's what you need to do." He didn't talk about the problem. He talked about the solution of the problem. That was very helpful. And the big break came when my father spent so much time at the marksmanship unit that he found himself reassigned to the United States Army Marksmanship Unit in Fort Benning, Georgia. And the reason that was important to me is that the United States of America dominated Olympic shooting at that point, rifle shooting, and all of our medalists were in the Army, stationed at the United States Army Marksmanship Unit, where my father worked. So I went from not seeing anybody on the range to having access to the best in the world.
Wow.
And so that was huge, and I took advantage of it. And all of them had the same story. They went to college. They had a shooting sports program. They were all made All-American. They took ROTC and went in the Army and went to the Army Marksmanship Unit and had an opportunity to train with other great shooters. And that's what I did. And I found myself at the Marksmanship Unit and made an Olympic team in 1972. And my problem was that the previous 3 years I had gotten to the top 10 and in the top 4, but I wasn't winning anything. I mean, my teammates were super famous shooters, but I make the Olympic team. The only 2 shooters can make the Olympics at the same time, from each country, from the maximum number of shooters. And so my teammate, John Ryder, was the best shooter in the world. I had never beaten him, but my practice scores were just as good as his. And I thought, you know, there's my chance. There's my chance to redeem myself. If I win a gold medal in the Olympics, nobody will care that I haven't won anything in 3 years. And so I thought, well, he might just choke because there's a lot of pressure on somebody who's favored to win. And nobody cares about me. Nobody knows who I am. And the only problem was Jack didn't choke, but I did. And I just had a huge mental failure. And when I lost so many points in the first half of the competition that I thought there's no way in the world I can medal, well, pressure was off. And then I shot okay. So Ryder wins the gold medal, sets a world record. I get the silver. They gave me the silver. I mean, I wasn't the only person that had trouble with the pressure, I guess. But I came home knowing one thing, that I needed to know a better way to think. And so when I got home, I thought, well, you know, what's really helped me in my life is finding people that know what they're doing and learn from them. And so I decided I needed to know how to win. And I thought, I knew where the winners were. They were Olympic gold medalists. So I spent the next 2 years on the phone at night calling Olympic gold medalists and world champions. And I saw some incredible parallels in the way these guys thought, and some things that I didn't know, some things I wasn't doing. And I created a system and used the system to win the world championships and to win the Olympics, and pretty much dominated my sport for about 6 years, and then started teaching. So it's been the thing that I was bad at. I made a business out of it, and so we've been teaching mental management to PGA Tour players, and Olympic athletes, and dog agility people, and all kinds of folks for about the last 40 years, 43 years, I guess. And so we have a lot of wonderful people that we've had a chance to teach. And one of the highlights of my life was meeting you and being asked to speak at Eagle U. And I just treasure those years that I was able to do that, because I could just see what you're doing and the impact it's having on young lives. And so we hope that we're making a difference in people's lives. And so that's it. So basically, to kind of end my little talk here about my life, is that I learned a very valuable lesson that when you think something's happening to you, it may actually be happening for you. You just don't know it. I mean, I couldn't make the baseball team. And at the time I was devastated. Well, it wasn't something that was happening to me. That was something that was happening for me. If I'd have been even an average baseball player, I never would have won a gold medal in the Olympics. And then when they canceled when the teacher made that statement in class, and that guy stood up and says, I don't know who'd have the best chance, but I know who would want to have the worst chance, Lanny. I mean, my Olympic dream was born because of that competition, that comment. I never would have won a gold medal in the Olympics if it hadn't been for that guy. When they canceled my rifle club, that wasn't something that was happening to me. That was something that was happening for me. I just didn't see it. My father was a tremendous coach, much better than the guy that I was running that program. And then a silver medal in the Olympics. I got a lot of gold medals, but that's my favorite medal. It gave me this company, gave me this business, this opportunity to help people. And so think about it. When you think that things are happening to you, I mean, just maybe you're going to look back on this COVID thing and you're going to think, you know, this wasn't something that was happening to me. Maybe this was something that was happening for me. Maybe you're going to find out something about yourself because of this, that a lot of us we're so busy with our lives. We're so busy with things that might not have been all that important. And all of a sudden, but they were immediate. And all of a sudden we have to stop and maybe spend more time with our families or more time with our friends, or think a little bit about who we are and what we become, and read more or learn more or whatever it is. But there's opportunity in every adversity. And so I think that's one way we have to look at this.
Your first, those interviews that you did after you won the silver medal and you started interviewing other Olympic gold medalists, what were some of the first impressions that you had when you started identifying similarities? What was one of the first things you identified that kept coming up over and over with that group? Because you found similarities, you know, among them, but what was one of the first that really popped out to you?
Well, it didn't surprise me that they were all skilled. I mean, you get skilled by a lot of reps, good information, and a lot of reps, a lot of hard work. But what did surprise me was how optimistic they were. How they refused to think about the future as being worse than the present. It was always about the solution to the problem, not the problem itself. And I started realizing that I kind of thought that if you want to get good at something, you just practice, and you get better equipment, better coaches, work harder, get more experience, and that's all you have to do. That'll get you to the top. And what I learned from these guys was that no, that'll get you from the bottom of the middle of the leaderboard to the middle of the leaderboard. But if you want to win, and I was interested in winning, you got to realize that that performance is a function of three very important mental processes. Skill is one of them. We call that subconscious skill, subconscious circle. We talk about these as if they're circles, but your conscious circle, what you think about, matters. That there are helpful and harmful thoughts, and they major in the helpful ones and kind of ignore the harmful ones. And you see people talking negatively all the time. That's harmful. And but they found out what were the most helpful thoughts, and they just ran those all the time. That was amazing to me. And I said, well, I've got to figure out what's the most helpful thoughts for me to think when I'm shooting or when I'm doing anything else that's important to me. And the other thing that I found out was that there's this thing called self-image. And self-image is really the sum total of your habits and your attitudes. And it's not so much so important what happens to you, but it's important what you do about what happens to you. I learned that these guys were all really good at responding to what happened to them, not so much reacting to it. And I had a lot to learn about that, because I was probably reacting more. When things were going good, I was happy. When things weren't going good, I was frustrated. And they didn't seem to do that. When things were not going well, they tend to say, well, what's this teaching me? What can I learn from this? So that was kind of the first thing, is that I learned that 95% of all winning is accomplished by only 5% of the people. And what's common among those 5%ers is the way they think. The top 5%ers don't think the same way that people in the middle of the leaderboard think. So I decided that I was going to find out everything I could about these guys, and it was a game changer for me.
All right, so let's let's talk about those three circles here for a minute. Skill, we get that. That's repetition, practice. You had that down. Let's talk about the conscious circle and helpful versus harmful thoughts in today's context for what we're going through right now. We have, as you and I were talking before we started, we have one of the biggest mental health crises ever in the world right now because of everything that's going on. And these same skills apply probably more so to the broader population than maybe ever before. But maybe you can take us down to the real basics. Lanny, in today's time, can you contrast, as you've worked with people through the last 7-8 months, contrast helpful thoughts versus harmful thoughts in our everyday lives? I know this is probably pretty straightforward, but lay it out for us.
Well, most of my work is with people that are all extremely motivated, and one of the ways that they get motivated is through competition. And what I've noticed that has been of concern, and I'm sure that if you take this to a little bit more of an extreme, it could generate into depression or something, some form of mental illness that's out really above my pay grade as far as because we're not psychologists at all or psychiatrists, and that's not our area of expertise. But what I've noticed from my clients is that because they can't go to competitions, when you take away that that element, they feel a little bit lost. I mean, you learn how to just take shooting and my sport. You learn how to shoot in training. You learn how to compete in competition. You take the competitions off the table, and there's an element. I mean, the purpose of training is so that you do better in competitions, and you take that out of there, and you've just rip the motivation right out of them to train. And so it takes a very unusual person to continue to train when they can't compete. Now, I've had some experience with that. And my case, the United States Army, when I was assigned to the Army Marksmanship Unit, I had the opportunity to train every day, and it was a great opportunity for me because I could shoot, I could draw a salary, and they would pay for travel and all that stuff. So I didn't have to pay for everything myself. It was my job, but that wasn't always the case. And from right after the Olympics in 1972, I had a job that had no shooting at all. I was company commander for a couple of years, and I had no opportunity to shoot. I got back to the Army Marksmanship Unit for a couple of about 6 months before the World Championships in 1974. I win the World Championships, and then they shipped me off immediately to do something else. From 1976, after I won the Olympics, until 1978, for that 2-year period, I was denied the opportunity to go to more than one tournament a year. So for the entire year, I'm having to dry fire in a bedroom at night for about 3-4 days a week, for maybe 3-4 hours a night, and without competing with anybody. But it's not the most fun kind of way to train when you have no bullets and you have no feedback and no reinforcement. But the people that are the competitors that can train without competing and keep their motivation up are gonna have a huge advantage over everybody that views this as a, well, I can't compete, so I'm just not going to train at all. So I've seen that as a big impact on my clients, and I'm encouraging them and of saying, well, there's a lot of things that you can do if you can't go to the club, or if they're not holding competitions. That doesn't mean that you need to stop growing. as a person, I think that humans need to know they're getting better. And competition is one way to measure that. But when you take that away, they have to find other ways that they can measure themselves to be able to get better. That's one way to stay healthy. The other thing is build relationships during this period of time. You don't have, all of us are in the same boat. Let's communicate with one another and let's encourage one another. And I think that I've seen that increase among at least my clients and among each other, and family relationships and so forth has increased.
So, I mean, I could talk for 2 hours just about what you've just shared. I mean, just that whole piece about training by yourself at night for two years with no bullets. I mean, there's a whole story there in and of itself. But when you were in those moments alone, what was going through your conscious mind? What was the disciplined thinking when you couldn't compete? What were you thinking?
Well, I had a little bit of experience prior to that about dry firing. When I finished my first year in college, my father was my coach, very good coach. And I made second team All-American, and I was disappointed that I didn't make first team All-American. And my father told me, he says, well, your problem, we shoot 3 positions, prone, standing, and kneeling. He says, your issue, the reason that you didn't make first team All-American was your kneeling. Your kneeling needs improving. And I can fix your kneeling, but you won't do it. And when my father told me that, I said, well, that was a challenge. I mean, I'm not going to let my dad say I can't. I'm doing it. What is it? I'll do anything, man. I was challenged by my dad. And he says, I don't want you to shoot any all summer. I just want you to dry fire an hour kneeling a day. And what dry firing does is it forces you to focus on the basics. It forces you to focus on the thing, on position setup and stability, and making the hold smaller and slower. And that builds a good kneeling score. But it's boring. And so nobody wants to do it. And I didn't want to do it either. And so by being challenged by my dad, I made sure every night, no matter how late I came in from a date or whatever it was, the first thing I did, I suited up and I dry fired kneeling for an hour all summer long. And when I came back to school the next year, my kneeling scores were so good that for the rest of my life, it was my favorite position. It went from the one I hated to the one I loved. And I had the highest kneeling score in the Olympics in 72, the highest kneeling score in the Olympics in 76, the highest score kneeling in the World Championships in 78. I had world records in kneeling, and all because of that dry firing. So I knew that it wasn't a waste of time. So the motivation was, I can't do everything, but I can do something.
All right. So where's the line, Lanny, between the subconscious, which you train with constant repetition and practice, and the conscious, which is what you're thinking about when you're actually going through this? Where's the line there? Because I know they're related and they're different.
Well, one way to look at this is that there are 2 kinds of skills. There are conscious skills and subconscious skills. The conscious skill, you have to think about it to do it. The subconscious skill, you don't have to think about it to do it. Okay, so I'll use a keyboard as a good example. When I type on a keyboard, I can hit the A key subconsciously. I don't have to think about the A key. It was underneath my pinky finger on my left hand, and it just hits. I mean, I don't have to think about it. But the At key, I got to find that guy. So
Right.
so that's a conscious skill. So I got to look for it. Okay, so the conscious mind can only think of one thing at a time. The subconscious can think of billions of things at once. And so what happens is you when you first take up a skill or a sport or whatever it is, you're playing piano or anything, you're going to have to think about it in the beginning because you don't, it's not automated. And so when you be able to when you have repetition, so much repetition that you don't have to think about it anymore to do it, you have transferred from a conscious skill to a subconscious skill. And most of the things that are we would call skilled, you have to do that without thinking about it, because thinking about it one at a time is too slow, and it's too much information. I mean, when my wife plays piano and her hands just fly over the keys and she's looking at the music, and how is she doing that? If you don't play piano, it looks impossible when you see somebody that's skilled to do that. Well, it happened because a lot of that is so subconscious now. But when I sit down at the piano, I mean, I got to find the note. But I'm sure that if I had as many years of piano as my wife has, I could play some better. No, I could. So that's the transition. And so the key, though, in the conscious is to come up with the right things to think about, because you can cause the subconscious skill to deteriorate if you have the wrong things. The harmful thoughts are the things that the doubt, the disbelief, the negativity, those kind of thoughts are harmful to you, and you need to figure out, okay, what's the optimum thing for me to think about before, during, and after a task. If the task is hitting a golf ball, or if the task is shooting a free throw, or if the task is kicking a penalty kick, or if the task is taking an exam, what's the optimum thing to think about before, during, and after that task? And when you can do that, you're running a mental process. And all that's done consciously. The other thing, a powerful thing about the conscious mind, is the conscious mind directly relates to the self-image, because self-image grows or shrinks based on imprints. And imprinting, probably the biggest game changer in my life was when I understood or was exposed to the idea of, or put this kind of together for myself and for others, about imprinting. Because every time you actually do something, like let's take basketball, every time you sink a free throw, what imprints in your self-image is like me to make a free throw. Every time you miss a free throw, it imprints in your self-image is like me to miss. So that's one form of imprinting. But every time you talk about making a free throw, your self-image grows. Every time you talk about missing one, your self-image shrinks. Every time you think about, talk about, or write about something, you become it. Whatever you think a thing to be, that's what it becomes. So what the top people do that's so incredible is that they think about what they want to have happen all the time. They don't worry that it won't work. And so their self-image is always growing. And that's one of the things, big things that you teach in Eagle U is that your attitude and what you picture and what you think about matters. And the more you think about something, every time you think about something, every time you talk about something, you move toward that. Your self-image becomes like you to do it. And so all of that is done in your conscious mind. Conscious mind does all that. So the self-image is the repository of all those imprints. And you're also imprinted by who you're around. If you're around positive people, you tend to be positive. If you're around negative people, you tend to be negative. And so you're affected by your environment some, but your self-image is kind of this, it's what makes you act like you. And it doesn't like to change, but it can change. It can change. If you change the imprinting, you can change the self-image. And that's one of the things that we want to try to do. If you want to be excellent at anything, you're going to have to look at all three of those circles, or those three mental processes. And everything you do has to try to enhance not only just your skill, but also your self-image and what you picture, what you think about, what you talk about, what you write about.
Lanny, would you say, this piece about how winners don't think about if they're going to win, they think about how they're going to win. Did I get that right?
Well, actually, winners are not trying to win. I'm talking about dominant people that are expected to win. These are the dominant athletes. The number one archer in the world currently runs our system. The number one skeet shooter in the world, American skeet shooter in the world, runs our system. Current world champion, and the current world champion last year, and the current world champion archer it runs our system. And what these guys do is they're not trying to win when they're competing. They're trusting that they will. And there's a good reason why they can trust, because they've trained well. And so they're very prepared, but they're not trying to make a shot. They're trusting that the shot will happen. And there's a big difference between trying and trusting. If you don't train very well, there's not much to trust. But there are a lot of people that are well trained that when they go into a competition, they try and they end up over-trying. And over-trying can derail a person. And
so when you say these dominant competitors, they run your process, what you're saying is they run the process, they trust the process, that when they run it, and if they work the system, that it'll produce the result that they want.
That's exactly right. And we just taught them a system that's been refined over decades of experimentation to find out what's the optimum system to run for archery. And then when we have a young man that okay, I'll run it, and he runs it all the time, and he's achieved mental consistency, and his skill level is so good that he's always shooting at the top level of his technical skill, and there's very little deviation, and that makes him very consistent. And consistency is critical in not only sport, but consistency is critical in business. Consistency is critical in education and application. If you don't like McDonald's hamburgers, you're probably not going to like them in Mississippi. If you don't like them in San Antonio, they're going to taste the same in Dallas. Right. I mean, but that's the reason why they're so successful, because the quality is the same. The quality is always uniform. So you ask any athlete, how important is consistency? They're going to say it's super important. Well, if your mental process is not consistent, it's very difficult for you to have your output, your result, to be consistent. So we have determined that on certain kinds of applications, like proactive sports, like sport is either proactive or reactive. A proactive element like golf and archery and rifle shooting, and that's 100% proactive. Some sports are both proactive and reactive, like tennis. The serve is proactive. When the ball is in play, it's reactive. Basketball, shooting a free throw is proactive, but when the ball's in play, it's reactive. Well, in a proactive element, like throwing a pitch in baseball, is you can have a consistent mental process that I'm going to think about. I've determined the optimum things to think about before and after I throw this pitch. And if that improves the probability that I'm going to put the ball where I want it to go, then I'm going to repeat that mental process every single time. And so that's what we mean by a system. When you run a system, it works great in rifle shooting and golf and in proactive elements. And that's what we're talking about, a mental process.
So if I understand this correctly, when you talk about that mental process of what you think about before, during, after, and then the customization is what works the best for that specific athlete, right? So what exactly do I think that will optimize performance? And that's individual. Is that right?
It's very, very specialized. It's sport specific and it's individual specific. There are some general things that we can say that there are elements in that mental process that seem to work best if you include all these elements. And but the way you apply it to a specific sport, some the elements may be more important or more emphasized in certain applications. And the way that you do that, there are principles and preferences. So the preferences are very much an individual specific thing. So not everybody thinks the same. Not all thoughts work the same for everybody. So there are certain ways that a person can think that are better for them that may not be better for the next guy. So it's both sport specific and individually specific, and that makes it interesting to work with people and help them find the things that work best for them, and hopefully they'll stay with it and not mess it up.
Give me some just brief indicators if I'm trying to figure some of this out on my own. How do I know, how can I tell what is the best thing for me to be thinking, before an activity, during it, or after? What are some telltale signs that go, okay, that's something I ought to think about at that moment?
Well, the first thing that you need to do is to learn to evaluate what you were thinking about when you were performing. And we call that performance analysis, where you actually keep a performance journal and you write down the things that you were doing well. What were you doing? What were you thinking about when you were performing well? How much mental energy were you giving it? Were you working really hard, or were you not hard, or not working too hard? As far as your mental process was concerned, did it seem easy for you? Were you pushing? Were you thinking a lot, or are you not thinking so much? If you can come up with certain things that tend to work for you, and you document those, and a smart way to go about it is to take a proven system like we have that has certain elements and say, well, do you have these elements in your mental process? Like, let's just say you're a golfer, and well, do you like we think there's about 6 steps that need to be in the anticipation phase of a golf shot. And those things should be strategy to figure out the shot that you want to make. There should be rehearsal. You rehearse the shot that you want to make. What does it feel like to make that shot? And then commitment. Are you committing to the shot? Do you have this sense of, I got this attitude about it, or that tends to wipe out doubt? That's very important. Commitment's a very important part of an anticipation phase thought process. And do you have a mental program that you run? A mental program has a start point. We call it a point of initiation, has a point of alignment where your body aligns at the right place, and the point of focus, the last thing you think about before takeaway occurs. Okay, all good mental processes should have those 6 steps. And then you hit the shot. Now, the anticipation phase is a conscious circle issue. The action phase, making the swing or the putt, is a subconscious circle issue. And what you think about immediately after you hit the shot is a self-image issue, because are you responding to the shot that you hit, or are you reacting to it? Responding would mean that you evaluate the shot, and if it's great, you rehearse it again. The next step is to rehearse what you did right. If it was not good, then you evaluate that, and you say that what work does it need? If it's a needs work shot, what work does it need? In other words, what would make it great? So you're picturing the solution to a shot. If the shot was not what you wanted, What's the solution? What would make it better? And that's an imprint, your self-image. Now, every time you picture the solution, the self-image grows. Every time you reinforce what you did right, you improve the probability you're going to do it right and some more in the future. The self-image always grows if you respond appropriately. So we teach people how to respond, not react. Reacting takes no mental maturity at all to react. If things went well, I'm happy. If things didn't go well, I'm upset. Well, you don't have to be mature mentally to do that. You knew how to do that when you were a little baby. When things didn't go your way, you let everybody know that you weren't
right.
happy. If you have any kids, and or if you were a kid, you don't remember that, but you did it. And but you're supposed to be grown now. You're supposed to be mature, and you're supposed to learn how to learn from your failures. Because honestly, making a mistake is not a mental error. Making a mistake and learning from it is a requirement to get better. I've never met a champion yet that didn't tell me they made tons of mistakes. The difference between them and the people in the middle of the leaderboard is they learn from all those mistakes. And so making a mistake and learning from it is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a great thing. But making a mistake and not learning from it, or refusing to learn from it, or beating yourself up over it, that's a mental error. That'll keep you down.
So this idea of a performance journal, when did you start? Because that's basically the embodiment of everything you've talked about. Is you consciously track this. What did I think about before, during, after, and you tracking that compared to results? How many years did you keep a performance journal?
All of them.
When did you start?
From the time I got to the Army Marksmanship Unit, probably didn't do it in college as much. I was pretty young and stupid in college. I didn't know a lot about this stuff. But when I got to the Army Marksmanship Unit, when I graduated from college, I had a problem. There were 22 people on the team, and the top 4 were the ones that went to the really big competitions that I wanted to go to.
Yeah.
And I had to get in that top 4, and I didn't have time to take 10 years to get there. I was only given 3 years, and then the Army was going to move me away, and so I had to move quick. And then not only that, but my coach told me that if I didn't, after I've been there about 3 months, he told me, if you're not in the top 4 in 6 months, I'm going to cut you, because I don't need you. I've got 6 world champions here now, and it's not right for me to keep cut a veteran and keep a rookie if that's not proven. So you're going to have to go around some guys. And so I just had the idea that I need to start documenting what I'm doing. Now, I didn't do it perfectly in the beginning. Sometimes I would write down my bad shots, and later on I would find out that wasn't a good idea. I mean, I remember one time I was getting enough 10s to be competitive, but I was getting too many 8s. So I had this great idea that I could eliminate my 8s if I could find out why I was doing it. So every time I shot an 8, I wrote down what I was doing wrong. What do you think happened to my 8 count?
It probably went up.
It went up. And I said, whoa, that doesn't work.
Right.
So now I started counting my 10s. I started thinking about, well, what am I thinking about when I get a 10? And people complain. Complaining is think about what you're complaining about. Every time you complain about something, you improve the probability it's going to continue. If that's
say that again. Wait, say that again.
Every time you complain, you're improving the probability what you're complaining about will continue.
Why?
Because it's an imprint. It imprints in your self-image, and your self-image becomes, whether you like it or not, your self-image moves you in the direction of what you're picturing. So you got to be careful what you're complaining about. What you're complaining about makes it like you to do that, even if it's not what you want. So you got to be careful what you complain about. Why don't you talk about the solution, not the problem?
So in the moment we are living in right now, Lanny, there's a lot to complain about. A lot that's easy to complain about. So shift our thinking. I mean, you want to talk about pandemics, civil unrest, natural disasters, political unrest, economic downturn. I mean, pick a topic. So shift our thinking from complaining to what? What do I talk about?
Well, if you're looking at what's wrong, you cannot look at what's wrong and look at what's right at the same time. So when you're looking at what's wrong, you're never ever looking at what's right about the country. About what's right. There's some people rioting out there, and that's wrong. But think about most people aren't doing that. Most people are helping each other. Most people are trying to see the good in their lives, and that just doesn't make the newspaper. It just doesn't get on television. But that doesn't mean it's not there. And so you can't live your life by listening to the news, because the news is by its very nature, let's show what went wrong. And be a little bit careful on this political season, because politics is embedded in the other side's just nuts, is wrong, and everything. Very little praise comes in that, and it's a sad way to live, to not praise people and not to look at what they are doing right. And it'll make you depressed to complain and to constantly think about what's wrong with your situation, because it's going to get worse if you keep doing that. So I'm saying let's decide what's really important here.
I just think I found my new write-in candidate for president, Lanny Bassham.
Well, I'll tell you what, I wouldn't make it very far as a politician, because I don't know how to spew forth the kind of venom that seems to come forth in politicians. And I'll pass. But
all right, we're gonna take questions here in just a minute, and I'd invite everybody. If you don't have a question for Lanny, you haven't been listening. So feel free to type in your question in the chat box. Lanny, you've talked about the three circles: the subconscious, the conscious, the self-image, and you and I have talked in the past about the balance between those three and how critical that balance is. Maybe you could just wrap up our formal discussion here with some words about that, about how you keep, you've got to keep building all three of those circles. How do you keep it balanced?
Well, I think that you need to constantly be vigilant about what you're thinking about, what you're talking about, what you're writing about. Is what do you want? And let's write about what we want, and let's stop worrying. Let's stop worrying about what we don't. First of all, 90% of everything you worry about never happens. And about 50% of the things that do happen, later on you look back on there and say, boy, I'm sure glad that happened. And so you control what you picture. That's the conscious side of the thing. Try to get better. Try to get better at what you do. Get in the habit of doing everything that you can the best you can. I mean, if somebody tells you to take the trash out, well, do it right. Take it all the way to the street. Do it. Set the trash can in the right spot. Do it the best you can. Get in the habit of building your subconscious skill in all that you do. Now, there are going to be certain things that you're passionate about, and you're going to spend more time with that, and that's great. But when there are certain things in life that you're going to be asked to do, well, have a good attitude about it. That's self-image, and say, look, okay, I have to do this. I don't want to do this, but I have to do it. So I'm going to either going to do it well, or I'm not going to do it well. What kind of person do you want? Do you want things to be easy? People appreciate things in direct proportion to the price they pay for them. Are you paying a price? If you're not paying a price, you're not going to appreciate, even if you get it. I mean, we live in an entitlement culture where people say, well, give me something without having to work for it. I'll vote for you. Really? You won't appreciate it if I do give it to you. You'll want more, but it won't feel good. It feels good when you work hard, and that's when it feels good. That's the reason why the people want to win gold medals in the Olympics. That's why they want to be valedictorian. That's why they want first chair in band. They want that because they have to work hard for it. And it feels so good when they reach it. And so you have to have a self-image that I'm a hard worker. And because you'll never feel somebody who you never feel as good as somebody who works hard for what they achieve, if it's given to you.
All right, Lanny, I think we've got some questions, if that's all right with you.
Sure.
Okay, so the first one comes from Joe, and he said, you stated that you talk about the solution rather than the problem. What if we do not know what the solution or what the solution should be?
Well, sometimes you have to be aware of the problem. I mean, if you don't know you've got a problem, it's hard for you to look for a solution. But I mean, I'm not saying that you absolutely never think about the problem. I'm just saying that if you do know the solution to it, think about the solution, not about what you did wrong. Think about what you need to do. And if you know what you need to do, you should think about, talk about, write about what you need to do. Now, if you don't know the solution to it, then you're actually in a position where you say, I'm looking for a solution. So now you're searching. Well, don't just stop. Keep searching. Talk to somebody. Read a book. Find somebody that has solved the problem and get them to teach you or to talk to you about what is the solution. What are other people doing that have solved this problem?
Awesome. I love it. Okay, so another question. Lanny, what would you suggest to maintain a healthy self-image if you have family members or close friends who are very negative? And I think that's so vital for so many people right now that are stuck in these households with negative people that kind of wear them down. And, we talked about this at Ego U about be careful of who you flock with. Well, what do you suggest if they're
it's a choice. It's a choice for you to be like them or the opposite of them. Most of the people that I know that had I'm talking now, may not be the person that you ask about, but I know some wonderful people who had abusive childhoods, and they had a choice. They could either be like the abusive parent or they could be the opposite of the abusive parent, and they chose to be the opposite. And so that's what you have to say. It's your choice. You don't have to listen to that. Now, if you've got a negative, if you're on a team and some of your team members are negative, and you don't want to be, you can choose what you picture. Now, one of the little tricks that I often try to teach people to do is that whatever they say negative, you say to yourself the opposite, whatever it is. It's if they say, well, we can't do that, and you say, well, I can do that. If they say, well, this probably isn't going to work, you say, well, it's probably going to work. Whatever they say that's negative, if you talk to yourself, don't say it out loud, but if you talk to yourself about the opposite, your self-image imprints more on what you say than what other people say. So if you say the opposite, a positive side, I mean, like, I don't know, just give you an example. Like, you're in sport, you're a shooter. Okay. You're a shooter and the guy next to you says, oh boy, this this wind is really blowing. It's really hard. I don't think I can shoot good in this wind. You can say, well, I'm a great wind shooter. And so, and I'll tell you, reality isn't what's important. It's your perception of reality. It's what you imprint. So you can be negatively affected if you let it, but you can be proactive about shielding yourself from that if you choose to. And I think a lot of people say, well, I just have a negative environment, so I'm just going to be what everybody else is. That's your choice.
All right, Lanny, I have a young shooter question. You ready for this? This is going to be very shooting specific.
Okay.
All right, so when you're rushing your shots and you know that you're rushing your shots, how do you slow down your brain and move to your subconscious?
Well, there's a really good chance that you are starting your process in without doing two things. There's one or both of these things are not in your mental process. The first one is that we call a commitment step. Is you have to commit to doing something, and the purpose of commitment is to eliminate doubt. It's like a no doubt moment. I got this moment. And if you think that before you actually attempt a shot or do whatever it is that he's doing, it's you have to talk yourself into every single shot that remind yourself that you got it, that you have the goods, you can do this. Okay, that will help. The second thing is to try to slow you down is that we have a step in a mental program called the point of initiation. The point of initiation always it's a physical trigger. The most often used physical trigger in a point of initiation is a breath. So let's say you're serving tennis and you're rushing the serve. Well, just say my point of initiation. I'm gonna take a breath. I'm gonna. And that will and there should be a pause there. If there's a pause, that will keep you from rushing into the shot. And it doesn't matter what you're doing. That pause kind of slows things down and brings things down and makes it easier for you to execute the next step. But those two work really well together. You start out with a commitment, and then you take the breath. And the commitment eliminates doubt. The breath slows you down so that you're in control and you're not rushing it.
Your favorite affirmation, Lanny?
My favorite affirmation. I know that God is sovereign and I want to do what he wants me to do in everything I do in my life.
Excellent.
Awesome. Okay, any other last minute questions before we hop off here and move on? Let's see.
One thing, Taylor, as you look at that, and Lanny, I want to thank you again for sharing. Every time I am with you, it's like the first time. I get so much out of everything you share. It's amazing. One of the applications of this that I'd like to suggest in our world today is that there is a huge opportunity in your vocabulary to run a process at the beginning of every day. Right now, with everything that we're faced with, one of the challenges I'd have for everybody that's watching tonight is to come up with your morning process, right? The specific steps, mental steps that you walk through at the beginning of every day to have a winning day. All of these principles apply just in daily living. And I picked up a lot tonight that I'm going to add to my daily routine before, during, and after. This whole performance journal idea, of really walking through. Lanny, you and I have talked about this, and this is in your latest book. Your classic book, Mental Management, I think is a mainstay. Everybody should read that. In fact, I gave it to somebody today, with Winning in Mind. And then your latest book that is specifically focused on how to coach young people using your system, and those 3 questions of, post performance of what worked, what did I learn, and what am I going to do? Those ought to be questions that everybody asks at the conclusion of every day. What worked today? What did I learn today? What am I going to do tomorrow? That whole improving yourself is just so timely. So thank you for sharing that. Anybody that has not read With Winning in Mind, it is part of the Steve Anderson required reading list. So you got to grab that. It's Lanny, it's on your website, mentalmanagement.com, and not only bears a read, but probably a multiple read, and read it on a regular basis. So Lanny, again, thank you so much for not only for tonight, but for a lifetime's worth of work and continuing to share your wisdom with people. You're, you know how I feel about you, and what a difference you continue to make in my life and the life of so many other people. So thank you. On behalf of all of us, thank you again.
We are
It's
so
been my pleasure.
All right, well, I think that's it. Lanny, thank you so much. It was so good to see you again. I haven't seen you since, God, like 2008. And I showed him tonight that I still have my original notes from when he taught me back in 2007, 2008. And he actually...
Yeah, back when I had hair.
Yeah.
I got old, Taylor. Sorry.
Well, this was awesome. If anybody has any questions, feel free to email me, and we can connect you with Mental Management if this is something you're interested in for yourself or your students. They've got great programs on there that they can talk to you guys about. So thank you again, and we hope you guys all have a great night.
Thanks, Lenny. Good
Take
night,
care.
everybody.